Hello again, and welcome back to Kingdom Tales. I'm Father Lee, and I'm going to be reading again from The Tales of the Kingdom by David and Karen Maines. Have you ever known somebody who was mean or unpleasant to you? I think we all meet people like that sometimes. Here's the thing that I tell my kids. When we meet somebody who is mean or unpleasant, a lot of times they're not being mean and unpleasant to us because they don't like us. They're being mean and unpleasant to us because they don't like themselves. And it's important not to let people hurt other people, and it's important not to let people hurt you. But it's also important for us to help them to see themselves the way that Jesus sees them, so that they can learn to love themselves the way that Jesus loves them too. That's how we show each other the kind of God that we follow and the kind of person that Jesus wants us to be. Our story today is called A Girl Named Dirty. Forever and always, the caretaker of Great Park brought those who were hurt or frightened, sick, or broken to his wife, Mercy, because she was wise and she made whatever she touched better, except Dirty. Dirty refused to become better. Caretaker had found her outside Stone Gate entrance, rooting around for food after a burner had beaten her. The child was covered in welts and bruises. When Caretaker approached the girl, she immediately stood to her feet and shouted, "I'm dirty. I never wash. I never cry. I'll fight anything that raises a fist to me." And then she fainted from her wounds and her hunger. Caretaker brought her to Mercy. But all of the old woman's efforts could not help the girl to enjoy life in Great Park. Dirty hated the cottage. She despised the people who lived there. She thought Caretaker and his tree hat and jingling pockets was stupid. She hated Hero's ugly scar. "I'm not going to live with those creeps," she declared one day, and she stomped off to the barnyard to make her home with the pigs. From that day on, she tromped around in the mud and slept in the sheds. She practiced her pig grunts. She learned pig calls. Ois, 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 ois. She watched the sows give birth to litters and made pets of the piglets. And because the pigs were gentle, she loved them. But she refused to love people. Another outcast was living in the cottage, a girl Dirty's age who had a disease that made her crippled. Dirty hated the cripple girl because she was ugly. "Sui, sui," she would say to her pigs. "How do they live with that ugly thing? Why don't they just get rid of her?" Dirty sat on a big sow and watched when Caretaker carried the crippled girl on a pallet into the warm sunshine. She heard that crone of a housewife singing songs. Dirty made pig grunts to drown out the sound. At first, Mercy tried to persuade her to come into the cottage for meals, but she would not. Then Mercy carried nourishing lunches out to the dung heap where Dirty liked to sit, and she ate there with the girl. Finally, Dirty refused any food from Mercy's hand. "I'll eat the pig slop," she said. "If it's good enough for pigs, it's good enough for me." Finally, the wise woman and her husband decided to leave Dirty alone. The girl would have to learn that what was fine for pigs was not always right for children. So Dirty lived in the pig pen in the back of Caretaker's cottage and never left it except to creep into deepest forest on the nights of the great celebration. Dirty loved to watch the dancing and the singing and the feasting and the joyful fellowship. She hid herself so well, none of the subjects of the king knew that Dirty watched them on the nights when the sacred circle of flames was lit. At first, entrance, when all the subjects become real, seemed stupid to Dirty. She had been irritated to discover the simpering girl Amanda was really a princess. She thought that Amanda's airs were all bragging. She was furious when Mercy walked through the sacred flames and became a beautiful woman. She snorted when silly Caretaker became Ranger Commander. What kind of tricks were they trying to pull on her? No wonder they were happy and kind. It's easy to laugh if you're really a princess. It's easy to be kind if you're really beautiful. It's easy to be good if you have all that power. But what if you were just ordinary and never became anything else? Life wasn't so easy then. Dirty hated the subjects of the king all the more, but for some reason she couldn't stay away from the great celebration. One night, Dirty hid in the hollow stump of a felled tree, and she watched the celebrants make entrance through the sacred flames. Looking through the dancing fire, she could see banquet tables being spread with glorious foods. She had brought a dried ear of corn from the pig trough and was munching on the hard kernels. Suddenly she heard someone crying, "Alms, alms for the poor." She peeked her head out of her hole and she saw a beggar, all ragged and threadbare. Too late. The beggar had seen her and started coming her way. She grunted and grunted, hoping she would scare him off. He peeked into the black hollow of the stump. "Aren't you coming to the great celebration?" the man asked. Dirty climbed out. She got down on all fours, pushed her nose into the dirt, and snorted. She made her pig call. "Ois, ois, 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 ois." The beggar was not fooled into thinking that she was a pig. "Come," he said. "Come. Go through the flames with me. Be my guest at the banquet table." Dirty looked at him. She showed her teeth. She grunted again. She said, "Suey, suey, go with you. You're nothing but an ugly beggar. I'd rather be with the pigs." The beggar touched her gently on the shoulder. Dirty drew back, but her arm felt warm where his hand had been. "Oh, Dirty," he said, "don't you know all the subjects of the king are nothing more than ugly beggars?" With that, he moved off. She was astonished he hadn't hit her with his staff or shouted, "You filth! How dare you call me ugly?" Dirty watched the beggar make entrance. She heard the rangers salute. She saw the glad clamor of hello in inmost circle. She watched the beggar become real. Through the burning flames, she saw that he was the most beautiful man she had ever seen. It was the king himself. And he had said to her, "Come with me." At that moment, Dirty, unwashed and smelling of the pig pen, began to love the king. Longing filled her heart. She wanted to be as beautiful as he. The music for celebration struck up. The king disappeared into the happy crowd. Dirty hid back in her hole. From her hiding place, she could see the latecomers hurrying to make entrance. Far off, hastening through the crowd, she spotted Mercy and Caretaker making their way to the sacred flames. As they approached, Dirty could see they were holding the crippled girl between their locked arms. They were taking her to the celebration. Dirty wanted a better view. She scooted out of her hole to see if that ugly creature would become real. She watched as the three made the kingdom vow. "To the king! To the restoration!" She watched them pass through the flames. "Ha!" thought Dirty. Mercy became beautiful. Caretaker became Ranger Commander. But the crippled girl was still deformed. Wait. What were Ranger Commander and Mercy doing? Now, the people parted as they carried crippled girl through the crowd toward the king. Dirty watched as the king smiled at the crippled girl. She saw him bend over, lift her into his arms. She saw him cradle that stupid girl's head against his chest. The beautiful man was holding that ugly thing. He was speaking to her. No, no, thought Dirty. He asked me. Then Dirty gasped. The king leaned over and kissed the girl in his arms, and at his kiss she suddenly became real. Her body straightened, and she was lovely and shining. It could have been me, thought Dirty, if only I hadn't been so piggish. If only... Dirty was filled with rage. Suey, suey, you stupids, you stupids! But really, she was angry with herself. The girl crawled off into the night, squealing. Back to her pigs she went, back to the only thing she let herself love. The next morning, Dirty sat on the dung heap and watched Caretaker carry the crippled girl into the warm sunlight. Ha! She thought, suey, suey, she's still an ugly cripple. But wait, the crippled girl was singing. The pig girl crept out through the gate so that she could examine her more closely. Hearing a sound, the crippled girl turned her head to look at the crawling face. Her face was as beautiful as it had been when the king kissed her. Even Dirty knew that no one could possibly think the ugly girl was still ugly once you looked into her face. It shone. So that's what happens when you're kissed by the king, thought Dirty. She remembered the warm, gentle touch of his hand. The thought of going back to the pigs now was awful. The thought of mud was terrible. The thought of living in the shed, of eating slop, was horrible. Dirty would have given them all up for one more chance to say, "Yes, I'd love to be your guest." But it was too late. She had become more of a pig than ever. He would never love her, never kiss her. When Dirty discovered that she had been crying in front of the girl with the shining face, she ran into the forest. It was days before Caretaker could find her, and when he did, she had clean hands and a clean face. Her hair and her nails had been scrubbed and washed in Lake Marmo. Her clothes had been washed in a nearby stream. But she was still crying. Caretaker lifted her into his arms with the sound of jingling and carried her, as he did all wounded things, to Mercy. Mercy was delighted. "Why, who is this?" she asked. "I'm Dirty," the girl answered between sobs. "But you're all clean," said Mercy, meaning to be kind. "No, no," the child sobbed all the more. "I washed, and I'm still dirty. I'm all pig inside. The king'll never love me. It's too late." Mercy shook her head knowingly. "We shall see what the king has to say about that." So Mercy took the pig girl to the next great celebration. Rangers stood watch all around the outer rim of the circle of flames. Dirty pulled on the cloak of one and asked, "Is the king coming tonight?" When the tall man shook his head no, her heart sank. Dirty followed Mercy, who had stepped into the fire. The heat seared the pig girl's heart. She felt as though everything inside of her was being burned. The girl screamed, and Mercy put her arms around her. She whispered, "Don't be afraid. It only lasts a moment." "It's no use. It's no use," Dirty cried. "The king's not coming. He's the one I have to see. No one else can make me clean." With that, the two passed through, and the girl looked up into the unspeakable beauty of young Mercy, whose long black hair now brushed her waist. Mercy took the girl's hand. "Let me tell you a wonderful secret," she said. "All of the people of the kingdom know it. It's the first lesson they must learn. The king does not have to come in order for us to see him. He is always present." Dirty stopped crying. She looked at Mercy. "I don't understand what you mean." "Listen," said Mercy. She held her finger to her mouth for silence. "Listen, and you will hear him speak. Be still. He has something to say to you." Dirty wiped her tears. She closed her eyes and listened hard as she could. Yes, there was something. She could hear someone speaking. It was the voice of the beggar king. He was saying, "Come with me. Be my special guest at the banquet table." Dirty kept her eyes closed. His special guest! She could feel something pouring over her. It flowed down through her, starting with her head and then behind her eyes, through all the knots and gnarls of her insides. It was warm and gentle like fluid. Mercy whispered, "It's King's love, Dirty. King's love." Dirty could hear the voice again. The king was laughing, and then he stopped. He said, "I'm so glad that you would rather have me than your pigs." The warm flood reached her toes. Dirty felt as if she was being held by the king, just like the other girl. She felt his kiss. Mercy was right. You didn't have to see the king to be surrounded by the power of his love. Dirty heard music. The violinists and the harpist had begun to play. It was time for the dance, which began the celebrations. She watched it so many times from the outside, but now she was in its very middle. All the subjects joined hands in one huge circle. Dirty wanted to dance. She wanted to sing and shout. She turned to Mercy. "The king does love me. I'm clean. I'm clean. The king has made me clean." Mercy took her hand and drew her into the circle of dancers within the sacred flames. Someone took her hand. The musicians began to beat. The girl knew the dance would begin slowly and then build, that the circle would turn in perfect order that moved faster and faster and faster. She knew the dance steps. She had watched them so many times before. But she didn't know that the kingdom subjects would sing her song. From all around the circle it rose, "I'm clean, I'm clean. The king has made me clean. She's clean, she's clean. The king has made her clean." And the circle moved faster and faster and faster. The subjects of the king sang and danced, rejoicing, but no one sang any louder or danced any harder than Dirty, who had become Cleone, the clean one. So the pig girl left her pigs for the sake of the one she loved. And she became the clean one, who had a tender place in her heart for all things ugly, because she knew a king who could find something beautiful in every garbage